All right, third story from that summer camp that I was working at. This is still at the ice rink that I was talking about before. Just to explain that further, we did a day trip to the ice skating rink. It was summertime. We went over to an ice skating rink indoors, and we had everyone there, taking the kids there. Some of them, it was their first experience ever on skates. Okay, so I remember we were going around the ice, and I remember the director was like overly concerned. These were 8th graders now. She was overly concerned with, make sure nobody falls. You know, be real careful, nobody falls. So I remember one kid was actually he was going around and he was literally being pulled by his hands. There was one person here, and the kid was literally getting pulled. And then he actually calls out, he's like, look at me, I'm skating. And I remember thinking like, gee, he's not skating, right? He's on the blades, but he's just moving forward. So I grabbed the kid's hand. I take matters into my own hands here, which, you know, didn't always have the best result when you're working at some other place. I grabbed the kid's hand. I'm like, okay, now let's go, and you start moving, right? So he starts moving, and he's finally starting to move, and he looks up at me and he goes, I didn't fall the whole time. Back to focusing too much on the outcome. And I remember turning to him and I said, my friend, the first time I went ice skating, I was 7 or 8 years old, and my knees were completely black and blue. I had blood. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I remember my knees being a little bit jacked up the next day because I fell a lot. And that's okay. Just like when you're riding a bike, you know, if you're so afraid of falling off, you're never going to learn how to ride the bike. So here it was, and then sure enough, camp director yelled at me, you got to make sure you're pulling the kid, make sure he's holding on to the whatever the thing was, the skate trainer. So again, I keep going back to it. Don't focus so much on the small term, but on the long term. Look at the big picture. You might think you're helping someone short term by giving them a little bit of help, and sometimes we need that. I'm not saying don't help anyone ever for little things, but just keep in mind, what's the big picture message we're sending? Don't do too much for people that they could do for themselves, because otherwise we're crippling them, right? Don't just give me fish. Teach me how to fish.